Steelers Nation, it is official. Joe Haden is looking for an extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is that an answer to their cornerback question of the future? Is it an answer to maybe playing safety? We're going to evaluate all the angles of what that could mean, as well as more for the Pittsburgh Steelers, both past and present, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Let's get into it.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I am your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a Wednesday, which means we go to Josh and Dean. Dean, we missed you last week. It was just Josh talking a lot of stuff about you.
Did we miss him?
See, here he is. I didn't even get to finish a sentence, and here Josh is taking shots at Dean in his first 5 seconds being back on the show. Dean, it's great to have you back, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I decided that I would come through from a camping cabin in the middle of the woods in North Carolina to get as far away from Josh as possible. I think Josh might have wished that on me, and but I'm here, and I'm here to raise some hell.
Well, if he did that, then we're even. It's all good.
Yeah, there you go. He says, when Josh wished that upon you last week, man, I was like, "Well, that's intense." Like, I listen. I have no parts of this, but hey, you know, if you want to sit on Jagger Bush, I don't even know what that is. He just said these things. He sound like something from Lord of the Rings.
What?
Oh, okay. I thought that was like a Lord of the Rings thing.
Really?
I didn't know.
You don't.
No,
you don't know what a Jagger Bush is.
Yikes! Maybe go cover the Ravens.
I mean, maybe. I guess. I don't know. We don't have those in Homewood. I'm just telling you now.
Look, Dean's so upset that he's gone.
Yeah, we're experiencing technical difficulties with Dean's stream right now. Anyways, we're gonna get off that topic. We're gonna get into some football topics. Dean, stop trying to talk through through your lagging. It's ridiculous. But in all seriousness, let's get into the main topic of today. Now, I touched on this briefly with Tuesday's episode with Tony Serino, which was very interesting because Tony Serino and I, he breaks down the conspiracy theories. But report came out from Dale Lawley, my colleague at DK Pittsburgh Sports, that Joe Haden was looking to get an extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is crazy how Dean is just in this posture. There you go. He's out the screen. Now he'll be back. He'll be back. But that was like the perfect like boomer like frozen page right there.
You said it, not me.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a boomer, but that was perfect for how Josh goes at him. Anyways, point being, Joe Haden wants an extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Josh, a lot of people are out here saying, "Oh no, Joe Haden shouldn't get an extension because he's too old and he can't play cornerback, that old, and this is ridiculous. The Steelers shouldn't take this up." Now, there's been the idea posed, and I've even posed this myself. I'm like, hey, what if he played safety, like how a lot of corners switch to safety? Well, he told Mark Caboli of The Athletic that wasn't part of the plan. And I was like, and he said, like, he's not sure if that's going to work. I wanted to get a sense from you how you felt about the idea of Joe Haden staying with the Steelers for an extension.
I would be happy if he stuck around. I don't blame him for not wanting to play safety. It's not his natural position. He has no idea if he's good at it. We have no idea if he's good at it. That's a gamble in and of itself if you're going to pay him and then ask him to switch positions. I mean, he's 32, so we don't know exactly how much he has left in the tank. He's given the Steelers all he's got. That's for sure. You need that. That's a man whose effort can never be questioned, and whose production has, I would say, lived up to what the Steelers have invested in him so far. It depends on how long he wants to stick around and how much he wants, but I think there's a world where they can come up with a reasonable extension for him. And let's be honest, the Steelers don't have too many options at quarterback right now. So let the proven commodity stick around for as long as he wants to. And if he wants to finish his career as a Steeler, as long as he can still produce in some capacity, I say let's at least hear him out.
Dean, I wanted to get your thoughts now that you're finally back with us and maybe your internet's working correctly. For 1 week, you don't have headphones. Another week, you don't even show up, and now your internet's acting up. You just are the problem child of the Locked On Steelers podcast, but we love you anyways, which is why you're here. So I wanted to get your thoughts. Joe Haden is talking to the Steelers about an extension. What are your thoughts?
I'd say let's get TJ Watt extended first. How about that?
Whoa. We were talking about one guy. Now you want to go to another guy.
Well, let's get him extended first. Isn't he more of a priority to get extended?
I mean, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so they need to get that money straightened out first. All that needs to happen first before you worry about Joe Haden. Okay? And to be honest, I mean, a guy in his last year, 32 years old, I'm not sure I want to give him an extension. He's a good, great leader. But I don't want to commit 3 years to him at this point. I don't know if it's a smart move. I think that corner is really the next big thing they're going to be looking to replenish outside of quarterback. But I don't necessarily think that means you put Joe Haden in for 3 more years. If they did it, I wouldn't rail against it, but I don't know that it's a really solid move to make right now.
Listen, there's a lot of angles to cover about this situation. We have a lot of things to discuss on this. We will continue the discussion in a second, but first, I got to tell you about our sponsors at betonline.ag, because football season is approaching and you want to get in on all the gambling action at betonline.ag, the best online sportsbook. Get all the odds on records, stats, awards, and season winners on the NFL season right on betonline.ag. Pittsburgh fans, the over-under for wins is set at just 8.5 wins, which means as long as Mike Tomlin's Steelers avoid their first losing season in his time coaching, you can win money easily at betonline.ag. You can also bet on all the Major League Baseball action going on this summer, but before the next pitch and before the next snap, go to your laptop and mobile device and check out betonline.ag for great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. And head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit by using the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, for betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We are here with Josh Axelrod and Dean Iampietro, continuing our show here on a Wednesday. Remember, you can watch this show on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as download us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the app Odyssey. Check us out on all our different platforms. And if you give us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple, I give you a special shout out at the end of the show. So, continuing the show right now, we're staying on this topic of Joe Haden. Dean, you brought up the point that everyone's bringing up. He's too old. He's 32 years old. He'll be 33 next year. And a lot of people are saying this. Now, here's what I say to the people that say Joe Haden is about to fall off a cliff. Joe Haden's, the style of cornerback he plays is a style which lends itself to not needing pure speed, to not needing to be faster than your opponent. He positions himself. He outsmarts opponents. He gets in position. He works better hand technique. He makes sure he trails properly. He makes sure he plays the ball properly. He makes this about his IQ as a football player and less about his athleticism as being the fastest man on the field, because he's never been the fastest man on the field. The man ran like a 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. That's never been his forte, even in the past few years especially in the past few years of playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So with that being said, I do think it would be a good idea if, and this is a big if, he's willing to come down in his salary cap price. He cost the Steelers approximately $15 million in salary cap space. If that's the range that you're talking about here, this is an absolute no. It's a non-starter. Don't even talk about it. But if we're talking closer to $8 million for a solid cornerback, I think that that's within reason. Dean, I wanted to lead off with you. If we're talking about a serious pay cut, almost half of what he makes now from the Steelers per year, according to the salary cap, is that something that you'd be even willing to entertain?
So hang on. He's going to get an extension from the Steelers. He's going to seek an extension from the Steelers, but then he's going to take less money per year
over the next 2 years, not this year. This year he's making his money. He's getting the money that's promised him. But in the next 2 years, he will be paid less in those 2 years than he is being paid right now because of the value of which you speak. And supposedly he's saying he wants to retire with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If there's value to that, I would think if I'm the Steelers, I'm like, hey, Joe, we got to pay TJ Watt. We got to pay Minkah Fitzpatrick. We got to pay other guys to keep this team together. You're certainly part of that equation, but there's a lot of younger guys we got to take care of. Can you accept maybe making, several less $1 million than you have in the last couple seasons with us in order for us to make that happen so that we can stay competitive around you? Do you think that's a reasonable ask or that's too much?
Doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what the Rooneys think. And
Very
they're the
true.
ones that have to
Very
spend
true.
this money.
Well,
And so I just don't see anybody going into wanting more years of a contract, but then just turning around and wanting to take less money to do that. It would be unusual. I mean, if it happens, great. If he takes a little bit less, he may be worth it, and he may, get moved to a different position on the field than a shutdown corner. But I feel like that commit at 32. I just come back to that, and how much are the skills going to deteriorate over the next 3 years? I know he's not built on speed, but I don't know if because you're committing money in a lot of places. You're going to commit, like you said, you're going to commit money to TJ. You're going to have to commit it to Minkah. You've got to make sure that core is solid and maybe build up with some youth in the secondary around Minkah. And maybe it's going to be time to do. I'm not hating on Joe Haden. I love me some Joe Haden. I think he is the best cornerback. I think he was the best cornerback last year. And I think without him, they're in deep trouble this year. But I don't know if that warrants an extension at this point. Let's see how he plays this year. And then if you want to sign him for 2 or 3 years after that, great. Let's see how he plays this year.
It's a good question. How he plays this year. Here's the thing, and I want to go to you, Josh, with this. The Steelers are not locked into having to commit any money to him next year. So this extension talk is purely speculation for maybe something that they do probably after this season. That's the thing here. If he stinks this year, they won't offer him that contract. But if he plays well, I think it's worth the gamble to say if he plays well for another season with the style of cornerback that he plays that doesn't really lend itself to being aged out of the position like some cornerbacks out in the NFL, that would lead me to think that this would be a smarter move to keep him in the fold. But what say you, Josh?
I definitely agree that we get TJ paid first, and then we see where how much money is left over at that point, and then we allocate those resources. TJ above everything else, no question about that. In terms of Joe, is it plausible that that's why that this news was floated out there in the first place? That he was like, okay, I just want to put this out there now. I want to be a Steeler. I want to continue being a Steeler until I retire. You don't necessarily have to worry about this now, but at season's end, we are going to have this conversation. And I mean, if Hayden's doing that, if Hayden and his agent are doing that to motivate him, I mean, I think that's it bodes really well for this season, because that means Hayden has an incentive to ball out. And B, if he does ball out, then sure, give that man his money. I mean, a reasonable amount of money, obviously. We've talked about the kind of pay cut that he would have to take. But Yeah, I don't think his skills are going to really deteriorate that much, at least in the first 2 years of an extension. That third year might get dubious. But I think he's done enough for the Steelers that if he comes out this year and plays like a guy who might have another 3 years left in the tank, I think we should reward him thusly. And again, I just came up with this on the spot. I love the idea that he's floating this out now to potentially incentivize himself to play better and the Steelers to pay him after the season. That I have no basis for that other than it sounds cool. So I hope that's the case, and I hope it works out for the Steelers and for Joe.
Does sound good, and I hope that's the case too. And like I said, if they extended him tomorrow, I probably wouldn't bat an eye at it. But I'm just not sure if I was in position. I might take a closer look before pulling that trigger and seeing what else was happening around.
It's just that there aren't many other good corner options out there at the moment, and Haden has been the Steelers' best corner for 3 or 4 years now. So
since he joined the team in 2017.
Yeah. I don't think that's a hot take. So Haden gets the benefit of the doubt until he really shows that the skills are deteriorating. That's where I'm at with it.
Right.
And again, the Steelers have approximately $73 almost $500,000 million in cap space, the most in the NFL before any future contract is signed to T.J. Watt or Minkah Fitzpatrick or Joe Haden. So there are numbers that are being factored in here that have to be part of the plan. So all in all, this is not something that's settled. The Steelers are absolutely talking about it. And here's the thing. The Steelers aren't going to rush into signing Joe Haden. Like Dean's talking about, hell, settle TJ Watt first. That's absolutely their priority. But I think the thing is we know that Joe Haden, a veteran of the cornerback room, a guy who's been a leader for this team, a guy who sets a really positive tone in the locker room, wants to stay with you. And if you get that opportunity, maybe that's worth exploring. And not right now, and not as far as, signing him before you sign TJ Watt and get everything figured out this year, but for next year and the year after, maybe that's worth a look.
Yeah, like I said, it would be okay. If his skills don't deteriorate, if he has a great season, you want to give him another 2 years, sure, but I don't think you necessarily can break the bank for Joe Haden either.
Yeah, just get TJ signed, make sure you have enough money left over for Minkah, and to do whatever else needs to be retooled this time next year. Get him
signing Aaron Rodgers, right? Yeah.
You said it, not me. Dean's advocating for Aaron Rodgers. He's on my side. You all heard
We
him.
almost made it through an entire show with Josh without saying Aaron Rodgers, and here you come.
I'll say it 5 times in front of a mirror. I don't care.
No, don't you dare. Candyman comes out in like a month,
Aaron
man.
Rodgers.
I ain't trying to have that on me. No.
Aaron Rodgers.
No, stop it. You're trying to mess it up.
You're scaring Chris, Dean.
You're scaring me. You're terrifying me. Listen, Candyman is terrifying. That movie, I'm looking forward to being just scared out of my pants when that movie comes out at the end of the month. Anyways, we got to take another break. But before we do, we got to talk to our friends at Built Bar. Remember, if you want a healthy treat that tastes like a candy bar but is a protein bar, Built Bar is the best protein bar for you. It's the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. It comes in so many different flavors, whether you want a fruity snack like raspberry, strawberry, or orange, or something different like salted caramel, cookies and cream, or a new flavor, Rocky Road, or my personal favorite, double chocolate. Built Bar has so many flavors for you to enjoy. And the best part, they're all healthy. They range for 130 to 180 calories with 17 to 18 grams of protein packed into each protein bar and only 4 to 5 grams of sugar and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs in each Built Bar. And that's a tasty and healthy snack that'll save you from eating the snack that you regret later and stay on task with anyone's diet. Order today and get your favorite flavor delivered right to your door by going to built.com and using promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED 15, all capital letters, all one word, no spaces. Locked15, and you'll get 15% off your order at built.com. Again, that promo code is locked15, LOCKED 15, all capital letters, all one word, for 15% off at built.com. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, with Josh Axelrod and Dean Iampietro. Remember, you can subscribe to this show on YouTube if you're watching us live. Also, you can listen to this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the app Odyssey. That's AUDACY, Odyssey. So, wrapping things up here, sometimes you got to look to the past to look to the future. But this is more so looking to the past to look to the past. Because these two guys want to argue. As you know, if you've been listening to this show since they've been on all year, they love to argue with each other. And over the weekend, of course, there were the Hall of Fame presentations. Now, if you watch Troy Polamalu and his Hall of Fame presentation, and if a tear didn't come down your face, slap yourself because something's wrong with you. Like, go to the doctor and get checked because you should have felt something in your heart tug at you when Troy Polamalu spoke. But when Alan Faneca spoke, the man that introduced him, Hines Ward, longtime Steeler, leader in all-time Steelers receiving records. There is a current debate that is still raging on. Is this man Hall of Fame worthy? And these two gentlemen on this show vehemently, there we go, better pronunciation of that word, vehemently disagree on this subject. Josh Axelrod believes Hines Ward is absolutely a Hall of Famer in the NFL. Dean Iampietro has made this point several times that he is in the Hall of Very Good, but not the Hall of Fame. Dean, I want to give you the first opportunity to defend your point here, because this is something serious. This is something that Steelers fans are going to debate about for quite some time. I wanted to get your thoughts on it and what, and just why do you still feel that way after Alan Faneca and Bill Cowher and several of the Steelers have advocated for Hines Ward? And do you feel like people are just getting too sentimental about this?
People getting too sentimental? Really?
Yeah.
Does that ever happen? Ward. Does it happen? Do fans do that in general in sports? Do they do that?
He's
doing
the thing. He's doing the thing, Josh.
I hate the thing.
What's the thing?
He's being sarcastic. Or he's doing the thing.
Well, that is a thing. You had Bill Cowher, you had Alan Faneca, and I think Troy might have. There was a round table that we covered on Channel 11 on Sunday where they were all asked, who should be the next Hall of Famer? And the three of them said Hines Ward. Alan Faneca picking Hines Ward was a concerted effort to get his name further in the ballot. Now, these guys were teammates of Hines, coach of Hines. I fully expect them to believe that Hines Ward is a Hall of Famer. They're going to believe that with their heart because they worked with him side by side in the trenches on the field day after day. They believe it to be true. But Hines Ward, now I produced the Hines Ward show for 3 years. I worked with Hines every fall for 3 years. I love Hines. He is a great guy. He's meticulously prepared for the show. He was wonderful to work with. Great guy. He was a great wide receiver. He's in the Steelers Hall of Honor where he belongs. The Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, not even 400 men in the Pro Football Hall of Fame who have ever gained. Hines Ward, honestly, is not one of the elite. He was never leading the NFL in receiving. He was a Super Bowl. First of all, I trademarked that sigh. Second of all,
I was gonna say, I just smiled at Josh's side because he just said, like right in the middle of your sentence,
I'll pay the royalty. I'll pay the royalty to use that side.
I'll pay.
All right, I'll send you the. You can Venmo me. I have Venmo. So
you know how to use Venmo?
Whoa! No boomers have Venmo, so maybe this man.
That's because I'm Gen X.
Ah, there it is. There it is.
So he was Super Bowl 40 MVP. Okay, and that's what Josh, I'm sure, will partially hang his hat on there. He threw the pass to Randall L. He was MVP because nobody else really could be outside of Willie Parker in that game. It was one of the most boring Super Bowls ever, and they had to pick somebody, and they couldn't pick Ben because Ben had a terrible game. He had 10,000 yards receiving, which they pushed him to get. Or was it 1,000 catches, whichever. I'm not sure. He was very good. He's a great blocker. No, great blocking. But when it comes to receivers going into the Hall of Fame, he's on the second tier in terms of Hall of Fame. Great career. Loved what he did as a Steeler. He's a guy you want to be a Steeler every day. Pro Football Hall of Fame, it just falls short for me.
Josh, I want to get your response to that because Hines Ward again leads. There are already what, 2 receivers from the Steelers in the Hall of Fame, and Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. Hines Ward may be the next, if there is a next. There's Antonio Brown who could be in the mix, and I feel like he will be in the mix when he's all said and done. But is Hines Ward deserving because of the contributions that he brought to me? He was the best blocking receiver in the NFL, and that is a claim. But Dean does have a point. There was never a point where you thought, oh man, he's better than Randy Moss. Oh man, he's better than Terrell Owens or Marvin Harrison or those guys of that era. But he was absolutely a serious threat during that time.
So obviously, I was willing to pay royalties for 2 sides because of how much I feel about Hines Ward's Hall of Fame case. I don't never do that again, dude. I think I understand that he doesn't have Calvin Johnson numbers or Randy Moss numbers, or yes, and I know they're not really anywhere near those guys in terms of the wide receivers who are in the Hall of Fame. Maybe I watch too much NBA, but I have to me at least, being the best receiver on a team that wins the Super Bowl should count for something. And
a Super Bowl ring, yeah.
I also need to correct Dean because it was Randall L. who threw the pass to Hines Ward.
Okay, whichever.
Unlike vice versa. So
okay, I mean, even then maybe Randall L. should be in
If Dean wants to make his case, he should be saying correct things. That's all I'm saying. But I mean, he was the best receiver on a Super Bowl winning team. He was technically the best receiver on the 08 team too, even though he was hurt during the whole playoff run. And Santonio was the receiver who really carried them. I believe he did get 10,000 catches, is what it was, and I do remember that little lame shovel pass that got him the 10,000th catch. But I mean, he defined Steelers offensive football for the better part of a decade. I would say more than anybody else on the Steelers offense, basically from the time Ben took over until his retirement. Him breaking Keith Rivers' jaw with a block is an all-time Steelers wide receiver moment that wasn't the catch. That's for damn sure. I understand empirically the case is hard, but and I also don't always love using nostalgia as an excuse, but I love him and I want him in the Hall of Fame, and that should be enough.
That's it. See? That's it. People love him and they want him in the Hall of Fame. That's it.
Josh, you were on a roll of like describing moments, and then you're like, you do realize, like, if you were a defense attorney, I love him and he deserves to not go to jail. That was your finishing argument there.
I'm fairly certain I'm not a defense attorney and that none of these arguments are admissible in court. And I feel very good about what I just said. I also want to really quickly add that I have been seeing the Antonio Brown is a much more deserving Hall of Fame candidate than Hines Ward take floating on the internet. And I just want to state unequivocally, if Antonio Brown gets to the Hall of Fame before Hines Ward, disband the Hall of Fame. It's not worth it. It's not a worthwhile institution anymore.
Be prepared because they may disband. To be fair, Antonio Brown was the best receiver in football for a span of 6 years. Those 6 years are better than anything Jerry Rice, Larry Fitzgerald, or any of the greatest receivers ever put together.
In my mind, the Hall of Famers are supposed to represent the game. Yes. I'm not sure that the NFL Hall of Fame wants Antonio Brown representing them. That's all. That's all I'm going to say.
That would be a great speech, though.
Okay. First of all, this speech would be amazing. Second of all, it is not the Hall of Fame. It is not the Hall of good people. It is not the Hall of
for damn morality.
Sure. Yeah, dang. Listen, calm yourself down. Don't be cussing on my show. But
My apologies.
yeah. Reel yourself back, young man. You Mr. Josh Axelrod of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Anyways, point being, Antonio Brown was the best receiver. When I think of the Hall of Fame, I think of guys who were the best at their craft in their era. And Hines Ward was the best at certain parts of his crafts of his era. That is certainly without debate. But if you put him up against the other receivers of his era, I do think that that's where you'd find him limiting, and that's where I see Dean's point. Now, however, I will say there are a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame who I would put in Hines Ward over. If you go and look at the long list, like there's certain guys that are just like, huh? They had what stats? They played for who? No, they shouldn't be there. But I get Dean's point that it's like, do you continue just allowing in on those standards? Because then you just get on the slippery slope of, well, then, you know what? Joe Flacco, he's better than this one guy. So why not throw him in the Hall of Fame because he had that one playoff run? Right. And so I'm not saying that Hines Ward is on the level of Joe Flacco, or Joe Flacco's on the level of Hines Ward, rather. But I am saying there is merit to the conversation that the Hall of Fame needs to be the Hall of Fame for elite players who were the best at their positions, and that you could legitimately argue that Hines Ward was not the best at his position during his time in the NFL.
It's sentimental. It is purely sentimental. But this is why the Steelers have the Hall of Honor. Okay? He is immortalized in Steelers lore, and he belongs in the Steelers Hall of Honor without question. Without question, he belongs there. And that's a place where you can have players who just aren't quite Pro Football Hall of Fame level. And this is something that allows them to have an achievement, a lifetime achievement of their game, which in some ways might even be better because it's with your own team as opposed to the whole league. That is something that is important and it's valuable. And that's where you're not quite elite in the league players, but he was the best. He was the defining Steeler of that era. And so, yes, he deserves that honor. But Pro Football Hall of Fame, 31 other cities don't care about that. But 31 cities can't look away from a Jerry Rice. They can't look away from the elite, the Troy Polamalu. Okay, they can't look. But I understand, and I'll probably catch heat for it, and I understand it because everyone loves Hines. But understand, I love Hines. I am just objectively, it's subjective, but I'm stating that his qualifications for the Pro Football Hall of Fame just aren't quite at that level. Sorry, guys.
Josh, your final word on this topic.
Again, I love him very much, and I want him there. Should be good enough. That's more than
That's not a good argument.
It's the only argument that matters.
Aaron Rodgers.
It's the only one I need, Sean.
Send him to the Hall.
Also, again, I just want to make it clear. I will not mind if Antonio Brown makes the Hall of Fame one day, but I would be very upset if he makes it before Hines Ward. That's all.
Since Josh doesn't want to put on, I love him, anything other than that, I will do this for Hines Ward.
No, I can do it.
No. I've given you 3 opportunities, and both times, I love him was your answer. You are going in the corner. Go sit in timeout while I do this.
All right.
The reason why Hines Ward deserves to be in the Hall of Fame is because he defined an era of football when it came to toughness, when it came to actually blocking at your position. Terrell Owens didn't want to do it. Randy Moss didn't want to do it. They did. A lot of receivers who were the top guys in the NFL, they didn't do it. But you know who did? Hines Ward. And when he did that, he established a precedent for all Steelers receivers. Guys like Antoine Randall, who came in and were hard-nosed and knocked the snot out of players that became key roles in the way to winning Super Bowls. And what they always say about Hall of Fame players is that you cannot tell the story of the NFL without naming this player. If there is a guy who is the greatest blocking receiver in maybe the history of the NFL, he is going to be named in the history of the NFL. So that is my rebuttal, is when you say when you say he's not a Hall of Famer, he's not the Hall of Great, he's the Hall of Good, and he should be that. I argue that in this situation, he would be a person who the Steelers could say, look, no one else did this in the era of football nearly as great as he was, while also being a playmaker, while also being a Super Bowl MVP, while also being a franchise leader in receptions and receiving yards in a franchise that had three different Super Bowl MVP wide receivers, 2 Hall of Fame wide receivers who are already there, and several other guys who were very talented for several years. So that, sir, is it. I don't have a gavel. That's my gavel. I just slammed the remote on my desk there. That, sir, is summary judgment in case of the defendant. Hines Ward wins the case. Dean, get out of here. Don't ever criticize Hines Ward again. Josh, I'm going to file a you have been disbarred. You can't defend Hines Ward ever again with I love him as your defense. There you go. There you have it. That's how you defend Hines Ward, Josh Axelrod. Not like the way you just did. And Dean, shame on you for ever calling yourself a yinzer.
I'd much rather just be disbarred than what Chris just said to Dean.
I went so hard for no reason.
Yikes. Yikes.
I went so hard on you guys. I'm sorry.
So, Chris.
Yes.
What do you even say to that?
What do you even say? That's a great question, Josh. I don't even know.
Tell you what, Chris.
What's up?
If Hines Ward becomes a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame this coming year, I will drink 4 whiskey shots on a show.
Yes.
Oh, we got a drunk Dean.
Finalist, not semi-finalist. Finalist. He has yet to be a
You heard it
finalist.
right here. You heard it right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Dean,
4 shots.
on air, on video, on camera.
On camera. If he is a finalist.
All right. Whiskey. What kind of whiskey we talking? Because I'm not trying to be cheapened out here.
Crown?
Okay.
Yeah.
Crown's acceptable.
Yeah.
All right. We got deals here. All right. Listen, we are way over our time. This is what happens when you go at Hines Ward on Locked On Steelers. Dean, Josh, thanks so much for being here on the show. This was a great and fun discussion. Josh and Dean. Oh, I'll start with Josh. Josh, let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
You can find me on the Locked On Steelers Facebook group, on Twitter at Jaxelberg, on Twitter defending Hines Ward because I love him. And you can find my work at postgazette.com. This is a pretty good couple weeks for me because a bunch of stuff that filmed in Pittsburgh is dropping on Netflix next Friday. So on Thursday, look out for a really cool feature from me.
Dean, same to you.
I will be in the Locked On Steelers Facebook group defending myself from people who now hate me. Still doing all the sports work at Channel 11. It's just wrapped up. The Hall of Fame just wrapped up. So we are gearing up for the fall, and looks like we may see the return of some Chris Carter there on the air here and there. So we're looking.
I'm excited to do that with y'all. Channel 11, Chris Carter's back in the building. That's going to be exciting. You can follow me, Chris Carter, at Carter Critiques, both on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks so much for listening / watching the Locked On Steelers podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Odyssey, or however you checked us up on this Wednesday. Be back tomorrow, Thursday. We will have AJ Ross of CBS Sports getting you ready for the Steelers preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Who should play, who shouldn't play, who we should expect a lot more of in this game. All find that out tomorrow's episode right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.